You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. But what happens when the truth gets buried under decades of noise, tradition, and fear? What happens when the real file, the one about you, gets mislabeled, misplaced, nearly deleted? That's what you're hearing now. They forgot to delete this, but not by mistake, by divine interference. There is a record that survived, a soul file. It was written before time tried to rush you, before shame tried to quiet you, before systems tried to shrink you into categories too shallow for your depth. And chosen ones, that file is being opened again, right now. Hello and welcome, my dear friend. You didn't stumble onto these words by accident. This is God's will that bring you here, and this is a very important one. You've been living inside a story that was not yours, a story edited by the ones who couldn't see you clearly, a narrative written by fear, then dressed up as responsibility, realism, tradition. They didn't rip your truth apart, they slowly rewrote it, until you believed suffering was sacred, that exhaustion was maturity, that your value was in how much of yourself you could burn to warm others. They didn't scream the lie, they whispered it, so often and from so many mouths that it started sounding like your own voice. Always be useful, don't be lazy, hustle, don't fall behind. And the most dangerous one of all, everyone feels this way. Because if everyone feels caged, you'll stop asking if you were meant to be free. They told you truth is heavy, but real truth sets you free. And freedom moves different. It doesn't sprint, it walks. They told you life is a race, but God calls it a walk. Psalm 23 says, "He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul." That's not a picture of panic. That's not a productivity plan. That's true living. And you've always sensed this, even when your life didn't match it. That unshakable feeling that rest is holy, not a reward. That beauty is important, even when it doesn't make sense. That slowness is sacred, even when it isn't profitable. They hoped you'd forget that. They flooded your mind with deadlines. They tangled your worth in your output. They taught you to think of stillness as sin. But your spirit never signed the contract. And that's why you're still haunted by peace many times. Even when you try to ignore it, it follows you, like a scent from your real home. It reminds you that urgency is often just fear dressed up in achievement. They needed you afraid. They needed you proving yourself. Because if you believed you were already enough, they couldn't sell you back to yourself. So the story had to change. They made you believe burnout was bravery, that to rest was to risk falling behind, that softness was foolish, that working through your pain made you admirable instead of just wounded. But my dear friend, the file survived, and it says something different. It says you carry ancient knowing, that your instincts were never wrong, just inconvenient sometimes, that your sensitivity isn't dysfunction, it's evidence, that your slowness isn't laziness, it's reverence. They taught you logic, but your soul speaks knowing. They taught you systems, but your body remembers rhythm. And you've been caught in between ever since, trying to live like a spirit in a world that rewards machinery. But you don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to rush to prove you're still worthy. You don't need to keep up with a pace that was never yours to begin with. You're not lazy, you're free. And now it's time to believe that, to let your pace breathe again, to stop comparing your sacred process to someone else's crisis, to let go of the story that says rest is irresponsible, joy is indulgent, softness is stupid, because they only say that to keep you disoriented enough to obey. If you knew the full truth of who you are, how could they control you? If you trusted your own soul's calendar, how could they guilt you into urgency? If you embraced the quiet power of being, not doing, how could they keep you dependent on external approval? Chosen ones, you were never meant to live like this. There's no deadline on your healing, no rush on your becoming, no clock watching your destiny, only presence, only truth. And you already know this. That's what makes you different. You don't need to be taught. God already printed it into your soul. You just need to remember, because spirit doesn't need proof. It feels and it moves. It leads you into timings the mind can't justify. And that's where your freedom lives, where joy stops needing permission. This is your confirmation. The file is still intact. They forgot to delete it, and God made sure you'd find it again. So the only question is, will you believe what your soul has always known? Because it's one thing to know, it's another to believe, and another entirely to embody. The truth that set you free didn't just arrive to whisper in your ear. It came to rearrange your movements, to untangle your breath from every silent agreement you made in the dark. This is where most people turn back, not because they don't want freedom, but because freedom feels unfamiliar after living in a cage that rewarded your captivity. When you stop apologizing for resting, you'll feel guilty. When you stop rushing to explain yourself, you'll feel exposed. When you begin honoring your rhythm, you'll hear the echoes of a world that never did. And that's how you'll know you're finally walking your truth. Because the old world won't applaud you for stepping out of it. It will resent you. It will call you selfish for choosing peace over pressure, irresponsible for leaving systems that fed on your shame, arrogant for trusting your inner pace more than their outer schedule. But you're not here to be understood by a culture that thrives on your self-doubt. You're here to live what heaven already recorded. That's why the guilt isn't a sign you're wrong. It's a symptom of unlearning, a withdrawal from the addiction of being useful. And unlearning takes courage, not the loud kind, the kind that sits with the discomfort of slowing down and doesn't run from it. The kind that lets go of people who only loved your compliance. The kind that says, I don't owe the world a performance. I owe my soul peace. Chosen ones, God didn't create you to meet expectations. You were born to carry revelation. And revelation walks slowly. It waits. It watches. It refuses to be rushed into rooms that aren't ready. This is why you felt off. Why you never quite fit. You weren't late. You were calibrated to a different timeline. A sacred one. So now the question isn't, what should I do with my life? The question is, what am I still doing that betrays what I already know? What routine still honors fear more than faith? What relationship still depends on your self-erasure to survive? What internal voice still measures your worth by exhaustion? You don't need to answer right now. You just need to stop pretending the file isn't open. Because once truth is seen, you can't unsee it. You can't keep living like you didn't remember. This is why the discomfort's growing. Not because you're failing, but because your soul refuses to let you go backward. And this is also why rest feels like rebellion. Joy feels like danger. Peace feels like guilt. It's because the world trained you to distrust the very things heaven built you to crave. But that file in heaven, it never said hustle harder. It never said stay small so others feel safe. It never said bury your gifts in case they intimidate the insecure. It said move when your spirit moves. Stay when your peace stays. Speak only when your voice is not begging for permission. Because in a world that demands your productivity, stillness is a declaration of ownership. Ownership over your time, over your body, over your breath. So if you've been wondering why things are falling away, why your old life no longer fits, why even your thoughts feel heavier when you ignore what you know, it's because the file is active now, and it won't let you return to forgetting. My dear friend, the uncomfortable period of believing what your spirit already knows will pass soon, and what remains is the real you God always intended. So let the old scripts burn. Let the false urgencies expire. Let the deadlines dissolve. You were not made to live by pressure. You were made to live by presence. And every day you remember that you make it harder for the world to lie to you again. Thank you so much for taking this journey with me. If you found value in this message, please like the video and share it with others who might benefit. Don't forget to subscribe and continue your amazing journey by watching one of the videos showing on your screen that resonates with you the most. See you there.